Does anyone else feel it? It may be the social media, it may be I'm listening to the wrong podcasts and wrong political commentators, but it looks like World War III is about to break out in the Middle East, doesn't it? From what I've read, well, it's not read, this is actual fact. Last Monday, a week ago today, the Russian, I don't know if he's the defence minister, Sergi Shoigu, I'll stick a link in the description. I don't think I've ever seen a photograph of Sergei Shoigu smile, and he doesn't look like a guy you'd mess around with. Well, anyway, Mr. Shoigu was in, that recently went in fire. Well done to the Strathclyde Fire Brigade for getting the fire put out and saving the building. Well, anyway. So Mr. Shoigu went to Tehran, and apparently there has been nothing but Russian military cargo planes arriving in Iran. That's not good. That is not good. The Russians are going to back the Iranians. The backstory to the thing is, during the presidential inauguration, did I pronounce that properly? During the Iranian president's inauguration, the Israeli government decided to whack a Hamas guy. Apparently the Hamas guy was the head negotiator, which then leaves you the question, who do you negotiate with if you've just killed the head negotiator? And it was during the presidential inauguration. That is just the biggest in history, isn't it? I mean, imagine when King Charles was getting kinged, what was the word for that? Made king. The French government decided to whack an Israeli diplomat in the UK. The Brits would go mental with that, wouldn't they? So Shoigu went over to Tehran. Since then there's been nothing but Russian cargo planes turning up in Iran. And the other side of the coin is Britain has a military base in Cyprus. I don't know why. Is that the end of our colonialism? Is that the arse end of the empire? But anyway, there's a British military base in Cyprus. And apparently all that's been happening is Israeli, American and British cargo planes have been hitting this base in Cyprus. So on one side of it, you've got the Russians who are about to back Iran, and the other side of it, the British and Americans are about to back Israel. The Iranians have waited. That must be terrorising the people that live in Israel and the Israeli military. The Iranians have been doing massive military drills. And what I heard in the first week after the guy got whacked in Tehran, they didn't pick up the phone to anybody. The Americans were phoning them, everybody was phoning them, and there was no communication whatsoever. It's an utter humiliation to the Iranian government and the Iranian president. They have got to respond. The last time they put on a fireworks display over there, it was very, very impressive, but they didn't do much damage. The length of time that it's taken them reminds me of before the war broke out in Ukraine. I followed that quite closely, and that's all in everybody's current minds, isn't it? The Russian military just moved trainloads of equipment for weeks. Anytime anyone tried to speak to them, they said they weren't going for it. I've seen some interviews with the other Sergi Lavrov, that is the Russian Sergi you want to speak to, possibly the best diplomat in the world just now. Even Sergei Lavrov was denying that they were about to go into Ukraine, and they went into Ukraine, but they spent weeks moving all their equipment and men into position. I think Iran's doing the same thing. So what's going on with all this? In my view, the American economy, they're $35 trillion in debt, and it's going up by $1 trillion every couple of months. The Americans don't have an economy. They've got a rust belt. They outsourced all their manufacturing to China, and the thing is oil theft and weapons manufacturing, isn't it? They've still got Boeing. Boeing's a massive business, but they don't produce cars the way they used to. They don't. Their exports aren't anywhere near what they were 30 years ago. You can blame Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan for that. They were just rampant capitalists of the totally wrong kind. So the American economy is on its arse. If your biggest export is weapons and your economy's taking a downturn, you need to use your weapons, don't they? So I think the big geopolitical game here is when the Yanks took out the Nord Stream pipeline, they whacked Europe. They whacked Europe's ability to have cheap enough energy to be competitive in the manufacturing. And you can see that just now. A lot of European businesses are moving to China because energy costs are cheaper and labour costs are much cheaper. So job done. The Americans whacked Europe by starting a war in Ukraine and blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline. The Yanks will run away from that, which seems like it's too hot for them to handle, and they will leave the Europeans to pick up the ball on it. The damage in relationships between Russia and Europe, that's going to take generations to fix, you know. So well done to the Americans. Part one of their evil plan has already come into force and fruition. We're reaping the benefits of it, aren't we? We can't put ships through the Red Sea via the Suez Canal, so all our imports and exports have become more expensive. Price of energy is nuts. Cost of living in the UK is absolutely bonkers. Everybody must notice it. When you go to the shops, things that used to cost £1 or £2, you know. So I think the big geopolitical game that they're playing here is if they can take out Iran, they're whacking China's economy. Most of Iranian oil and gas goes to China. So they whack Europe with the Nord Stream in the war. And if they start a war in Iran, they're going to take out China. On some level, it's incredibly clever, isn't it? I mean, it's satanic, absolutely horrible. But on some geopolitical chess move, it's just remarkable. So hold tight. Nobody has any idea when the Iranians are going to respond, but I reckon they will, and I think the gates of hell are going to open up, you know. So the UK is involved as ever, backing up the Americans and backing up the Israelis. I've been a fan of Scottish independence all most of my adult life, certainly since the last Labour military adventurism in Iraq. If ever there was a time for Scotland to cut the ties with America, Israel and the British government, is now. Let's look at a quick escalating scenario. The Israelis are armed to the teeth with nuclear weapons. Iran does an overpowering barrage onto their military facilities. The Iranians decide to retaliate with a nuke. Russia's in there. The NATO gets involved, then everything escalates to a point where the Iranians, Chinese and Russians decide to take out NATO military infrastructure in Europe. The first two things are going for a Ramstein and Coolport, aren't they? If you knew where your adversary stored it's nuclear warheads, you would whack them without thinking about it. It'd be the first thing on the target. So there we go, 2 uploads in one day. One of them cheery and one of them not very cheery at all. However, British government, throw the clowns in the bin and let's get away from them. Yeah, that's the next thing as well with Scotland. We do not have the political leadership. The SNP have been corrupted by MI5, I reckon, and they're just full of woke idiots. We need some tigers just now, and we've got some mice. Alrighty, so let's see what happens over the next week or two, but nothing good. There is no good outcome to this. There is no good outcome to this. Alright, sleep tight, y'all. Bye.